Welcome to Backpacker Radio, presented by The Trek. Today is January 22nd, National Blonde Brownie Day. Do you know there's a thing?
Yeah, aren't they called blondies?
I don't know. I've never heard of this before.
I might be guessing. I think that's a thing.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they're like vanilla brownies.
Okay.
They're the ones that are like yellowish tan.
Yeah. I'm going off of the image that the internet gave me, but
I don't think I've had one, if that helps.
Maybe a chore for the next episode. I am your co-host, Zach Badger Davis, and sitting to my right is...
I am Juliana Chauncey, a.k.a. Chaunce.
Today's also our 6-year anniversary, so happy anniversary us.
Yee.
What'd you get me?
My presents.
Okay. I got you Taco Bell.
My presents is the present.
Yeah. I think that's a Kanye lyric.
You're welcome.
You have a lot in common with Kanye. Although that shouldn't read too much into that one.
No, I think I have very few things in common.
Okay. Seeing as today is our anniversary, Rachel left a note here trying to pry for your guys' sympathy by supporting us on Patreon. Patreon.com/backpackerradio. If you guys enjoy this podcast, we do a bonus episode each month on the first Wednesday of each month. A recent one we called our Patreon supporters a little Q&A episode, and that one went really well. The early feedback on that one has been exclusively positive. So we think we're probably going to run that format back in forthcoming episodes. What's some other ideas that we have in the pipeline? Do we have ideas? I'm putting you on the spot right now.
We were going to go to sushi, and we were going to do a sushi eating contest.
Yeah. Where
you could forego a sushi in exchange for a sake.
Correct.
And then we were going to
And then the winner got to decide what happens with that wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should add the caveat that this is an all-you-can-eat sushi place.
Yes.
So one of us will leave in a stretcher, most likely.
I made the caveat of you can sub sushi for sake for my own sake, because you can out-eat me. What's the conversion rate? Like one of the little sake cups. Yeah. Or one of the little sushi rolls. They're the same size.
Okay. So one shot for one sushi roll bite?
For one sushi roll.
Like the whole roll?
The piece.
Yeah.
Yes.
Seems like a bad trade for you.
It is. But I didn't think you'd agree to more.
Sure. Fair enough. So yeah, head on over to patreon.com/backpackerradio if you guys want additional content and or to support us. It is our birthday. So you have to do that. Another reminder is, this beautiful Tyvek we've got strewn across our extra wall now, which has been signed by many Hall of Fame guests. We're going to be auctioning this bad boy off and donating the money to some charity. We still have to figure that part out. But yeah. We've got all the heavy hitters in the world of long-distance walking who've scribbled on this wall. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
A lot of them. We got Jabba, we've got... we've got Pony, we've got Courtney Dahlwalter, we will have our upcoming guest in a moment. We've got
multiple Skirkas.
We got Frisky.
Kyle hates hiking.
Abstract. Rolf.
Now we're assholes for not listing everyone on here.
I'm not wearing my glasses. I'm doing the best I can.
Okay. Well, we're going to be auctioning this guy off. All the money will go to some nonprofit. By the time that you hear this, we will probably have selected the nonprofit. But if you want to be notified about when this auction is going to be happening, definitely sign up for the Trek's newsletter. We'll make an announcement through there. And we'll also have details via Backpacker Radio Social. And last thing before we get to the interview is if you're taking on a long-distance trek in 2024 and you want your journey featured on a large platform, hit us up at The Trek. We are still accepting bloggers for this upcoming season, and we'd love to work with y'all. Okay, this guy has been requested by many, many people. If you've been on a platform called Instagram, the voice will be likely very familiar here in a short second.
TikTok more so, too.
I don't do TikTok, so
okay.
I'll just have to take your word for it. But certainly Instagram, I can testify to that. Mm-hmm. This is Matt Schmutz, Lyons. You've seen him introduce himself as Flyrod, Plaid, or Gree, among other names in one of his many viral TikTok and Reels. In addition to making comedic skits on social media, Matt is also an accomplished backpacker, having completed both the AT and the PCT. Matt, thank you so much for joining us here on Backpacker Radio.
Thanks for having me. What's up? My name's Schmutz.
In your next video, do you know what you're going to be introducing yourself as? How long do you spend planning out the name? Because the name by itself makes the video so funny.
Yeah, so I usually plan the concept of the video first, and I'll do my research if I need to. Sometimes it's a topic that I'm a little more in touch with, but sometimes it's something that I've never experienced or a place I've never been. And so I'll plan the video, get the script going, and then I'll think of words that are associated with that, and I'll do a list of names, and I'll whittle it down until the best one kind of comes out.
So when you're doing ones for like, and I've actually, before we even had you on the podcast, someone saw one of your reels and they're like, how do you think he does this? So this is my question for that, which is, let's say you're doing like, hi, my name's Tacoma, I'm in Bozeman, right?
Mm-hmm, yep.
If you don't live in Bozeman, how do you find all these stereotypes out about the people in that place?
So most of the places that I started making videos for, I had been to at least briefly, but then I quickly ran out of those places. And I got to places like Missoula or Boise, and I had never been to those places. And so I do a lot of research. One, people will message me and they'll be like, you should do a video about this place. And I'll be like, oh, do you have any like talking points or things that I should highlight? And so I will take in kind of viewers' suggestions, but then I'll also dive deep into like Reddit forums and look online, see like highlights of that city. And sometimes I get it completely wrong. And a lot of times I'll make some points that people are like, oh, you're not a local. And so that kind of makes me dive even deeper on the next one. So it is a little bit of research, and it can take some time to write the script. But once I have the script, it's like I'll film it pretty quick.
Do you have a background in comedy? Like, were you doing improv classes? No?
Not even a little bit, no. I was actually growing up, I hated when people, like, when I was the center of attention. It was, like, the one thing I hated. My brother will testify to this. He'll be like, yeah, he never wanted anyone to look at him. If people looked at him, he would, like, go back into his cave, right? And be, like, into my turtle shell. So comedy, it's never been, like, a thing. I do like joking around with friends a lot and kind of bantering with people that I hang out with, and that's kind of led to this. And then through the hiking and kind of all the work that I've done in the outdoor industry, I've gotten to know some of these stereotypes, if you will. Mm-hmm. And through COVID, that's when I started really posting on these platforms, and it kind of grew into this video thing of comedy where it wasn't really when I started. So
is it tough to take that leap as somebody that doesn't like being the center of attention? Because usually, like, I have friends that do funny stuff on social media, but you would guess that they would like the attention, right? Like, they kind of meet that stereotype. It's hard for me to imagine somebody that, like, shies away from that having the cojones to go out and just, like, putting a bunch of comedic skits on social media.
Yeah, and yeah, when you think of social media and posting, like, Reels or TikToks, you think of, I'm doing this to get the attention of viewers, right? Whereas when I started, that wasn't necessarily the intention. I just started posting like montages of clips from my hikes, and it wasn't even comedic. It was just, this is what I saw in the woods. And then people started asking questions on those videos about the hike. It got into like answering those questions. And then for some reason, something clicked where I was doing the trends on TikTok for a while. And that sort of morphed into just kind of standing and talking to the camera and making these one-liners for each topic. So it's a little strange, yeah.
In addition to your skits being very funny, you are blessed with an amazing voice. Like, you were born to do... No, seriously, like, you should be doing something in the audio field, or video as well. Like, regardless of what avenue you found, is that something that you were aware of or you've been told in the past?
I've been told a couple times, and my friend just the other day was like, oh, you should do like radio or a podcast or something. And I hate the sound of my voice. You know that thing when you're watching videos and you're in the video and you're like cringing when you hear your own voice?
We are very familiar with that.
Yeah, so I used to hate that a lot. I've kind of gotten used to it now that I've been posting more frequently. But yeah, I never really thought of myself as having a good voice. It's just kind of, a lot of people will say I have a deep voice, like a really monotone voice. And I think that's what kind of makes the videos have a little bit more comedic value too, is just the delivery of the lines. Because sometimes when I'm writing the scripts, I'll read it over to myself and I'm like, this isn't even like, these aren't even funny. Like, what am I doing? And then I'll like say it kind of in character and it takes on a whole different image or perspective. So I guess the voice does have a lot to do with it. Yeah. I have been told every once in a while.
Yeah.
Does your girlfriend find these funny, or at some point is she just like, shut up?
She is my number one fan right now. We always sit down and she'll like pull up the video that I posted that day. Like I'll go over to her place and she'll be like, "Oh, I love that video." I'm like, "Really?" Because I didn't love it. And so she lifts me up a lot. But yeah, there are times when I'm telling myself like, "Oh, she's gonna cringe when she sees this one," and I still get there and she's like, "That was sick. That was sick." So yeah, she's been supportive. Not necessarily. We're still pretty early in the relationship, but she's been a really supportive person for the videos.
My wife might not even know the name of this podcast, just to put it in perspective.
I told Garrett he never had to listen.
Yeah,
and he's held true to that.
It's we are very niche here, so
it's a safe space.
Yeah, for sure. Did you meet your girlfriend by way of your popularity through this?
So that's kind of a funny story. We met on Hinge, a dating app, and
he met his wife on Tinder.
Yeah.
No way. Yeah. Right on, man. And we so I live in Boston. The Hinge scene is popping over there. And so we met on there, went on a date to this brewery, and I didn't really know how to approach it because I wasn't sure if she had seen the videos or kind of what the deal was. So it got to the point where she was like, "Oh, like, what do you do for work?" And I'm like, "I don't really know how to bring this up. Like, I'm not sure if you've seen this before, but I kind of post content, like comedic outdoor content." And then she's like, "I know." I know. And so we kind of went down the rabbit hole of like how that all started. And so she did know, but I like to think that that wasn't the reason why we went on that date. And I don't think it was. But
you mentioned that coming up with a lot of the concepts come from like having a knowledge of the outdoors through your experience in the outdoor industry. Mm-hmm. Besides the hiking, which we will get into, do you have a background with working in the outdoors, or like what do you do when you're not on TikTok?
Yeah, so sophomore year of college, I was looking for a summer gig, and my dad had worked at this summer camp up in New Hampshire. And like New England summer camp is like very classic thing, right? And I was never like a summer camp kid. But my dad was like, "Oh, there's like this great opportunity." We had always gone on some hiking or camping trips as a family. Like every year he would take us on a camping trip, me and my brothers, and we'd go on some sort of hike. And so that sophomore year of college, he's like, "There's this camp. They have an outdoor program. I used to work there in the 80s for one summer. You should apply." So I applied, interviewed, got up there. And it's a traditional summer camp, but they have this thing called Camp Craft, which is like their outdoor program. And I was like a hiking specialist, they called it. And it's in the White Mountains, right near the AT. So it's Cape Moonshine Road. AT crosses right next to that. You can pretty much walk into camp. And so I worked there for 8 summers, leading day hikes, leading overnights. We did like 3 to 5 day backpacking trips with kids 8 to 15 years old. And a lot of those hikes were on the AT. So we would even do one called the AT Challenge, where it was from the flagpole in camp to the summit of Mount Washington. So it was about 80 miles on the AT, super rugged, as you all know. And throughout that experience, I met a lot of thru hikers, and that kind of sparked my interest in long distance backpacking. So that was kind of my outdoor industry like work that I had done in the past, and that kind of led to where I am today, I like to think.
I've also put in 8 years at summer camps working.
There you go. You
understand how that gets you into it.
How many of the stereotypes that you use on your skits are you making fun of yourself?
I'd say like 60%, and that's just because I haven't tried a lot of the activities that I make videos about. I'm getting to a point where I'm kind of branching into things that I haven't really tried, right? Mm-hmm. Similar to the cities that I do. So for example, fly fishing. I've never been fly fishing in my life. So making a video about that, one, I had to do a lot of research, but two, I wasn't sure entirely kind of what that culture looks like. But the hiking, snowboarding, climbing, like all of those ones, very much self-deprecating, and I'm making fun of myself. So I'd say around 60% or so.
And I imagine you get people asking you to roast them all the time, like either their group or their specific thing. Actually, that brings up, have you considered, or maybe you're on Cameo?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am on Cameo. And I've done quite a few videos where people are like, "It's my mom's birthday. She loves your videos. She's really into this, 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 and this. can you make a video just poking fun at that? And I'll write a script for it, and I'll film the segments. I'll like crop them together, and I'll send it over, and it's hilarious to see their reactions. Yeah. So,
what's the funniest thing you've had to make fun of for a cameo?
There was a roast. Somebody had their friend ask for a roast about him doing like, it was a bunch of like backcountry skiing things, and he had like 6 golden retrievers or something like that, like a stupid amount of dogs, which is like, I love dogs, but it was like, that's a lot of dogs. And it was almost like, this is a joke in itself. I can say this like I'd be talking to a random person, and that's hilarious, right? So it's just kind of roasting people, and I'm like, I really feel bad doing this, not knowing the person, and I hate to be personal in my videos, but they asked for it. Right?
They're paying you to do that.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, with my videos, I like to poke fun at stereotypes. I like to kind of make people get off their high horse a little bit with certain activities, right? Because some people can get a little elitist with certain things, right?
Totally.
And they might not mean it as a malicious thing, but it's kind of fun to just be like, listen, this is just like, we're going skiing, right? We're doing this for fun. And I try not to be, I don't want to be like malicious to them or single anybody out. I just kind of like, I see these concepts and these cultures of people, and I think, wait, how can I embody that in a video and maybe make them realize that sometimes, I might be taking this a little too seriously, right?
Have you ever encountered a group that you found to be like maybe too sensitive? Like, I won't make fun of them again because there's a little too much pushback. Like, for instance, we did a segment, I won't go into too much of the details, but I made fun of Taylor Swift, kind of tongue-in-cheek, very much tongue-in-cheek, and people said some pretty nasty things about me as a result. So I will not be attacking Taylor Swift anytime soon. Have you found your Taylor Swift group?
Yeah, I mean, Swifties are a beast, right?
Yeah, they're ruthless.
So I'd say I did make a recent video about like whiskey and people who drink whiskey and like seek out whiskey and can tell all the different like notes in a whiskey, right? Yeah. I know nothing about whiskey. I was like, college is my only experience with whiskey, and it was like Fireball or something.
Yeah, right. Jim Beam.
Yeah. And a lot of the comments are like, oh, that's not even a good whiskey he's using in the video. I'm like, that's the point. I'm like, if he were a real whiskey drinker, he'd be doing this.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people who it's targeted to don't really see it as like a joke almost, and they'll be like coming at me in the comments a bit.
It just makes it funnier for everyone else.
Yeah. So
that reminds me, I used to love the Colbert Report back in the day.
Sure.
And are you familiar with the Colbert Report?
Report.
Okay.
Colbert Report.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying, isn't it?
I didn't hear the T there.
No. I didn't hear it either time.
Wasn't it the Report? Because like he was making fun of the fact that the T's silent in his name. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I've never watched an episode.
Okay. Well,
you might be right.
Yeah. It was a parody on Fox News shows, basically. Like he was playing the most conservative guy, but like to the extent that he's clearly making fun of them. But they did a poll, and the conservative watchers that were exposed to his show all thought that he was being serious. So it's one of those things where like you make fun of people enough, they're not even aware that you're making fun of them because they are the stereotype.
Yeah, and you'll get like those defensive commenters as well who are like defending me in the comments, and they're like, they're like responding to their comments saying, that's the reason he made the video. Like, you are the subject. Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't want to say that myself. But yeah.
Have you found one group in particular to be like have the best sense of humor, like, or do most people get the joke?
Yeah, I feel like the most hostile are usually also locations too, like cities. Ooh. But the most supportive or ones who agree the most are probably like, I've had climbers who are decently supportive, and obviously it depends who's actually commenting, right? Sure. There might still be climbers out there who are like, oh, this is BS, you know? But definitely the most. The ones who put up the walls the most are the people from certain cities, right?
What are the most hostile cities?
Oh, man. Bozeman is a big one. Another one, Bend, Oregon. Not going to lie, Boulder.
I feel like those are the three the same cities.
That's like the trifecta, yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, because I I've only been to 2 or 3. I've never been to Bozeman, but from everything that I imagine, Bozeman to me just looks like a Montana Boulder. Like it's the same place.
Yeah. I have a question for you too. Living in Colorado, do people say Colorado or Colorado? Because I say Colorado.
I say Colorado because I'm from New York, but I learned when I got here that the people from here say Colorado.
That's what I've heard. Everyone I've talked to here is like Colorado. Is that just because they think they're rad?
That's just like people who are from here. That's how they can smell us out.
Yeah. Chance and I are both immigrants, so yeah,
sure.
She's from the East, I'm from the Midwest, so we're saying it wrong. But they say a lot of things very goofy in the state.
Yeah.
Like there's a town spelled Buena Vista, and they pronounce it Buena Vista.
Yeah.
It's also Salida instead of however you're supposed to say Salida in Spanish.
I don't even know.
It's a Spanish word,
I
think, for exit.
Okay.
But it's not pronounced Salida.
Yeah. Yeah, so Coloradans are weird.
I wonder if does it mean exit? I made that up.
I think it does, yeah. I think you're right.
Sick.
In my vast knowledge of Spanish.
Okay, I'm not going to look it up. I'm just going to assume I'm right.
Let's back up a little bit. I'm sure people can discern, and I'm guessing the vast majority of people who are listening to this have encountered your content on social media, but in your own words, how would you describe your skits? Obviously, we talked about it's a parody and like clips edited together. Is there any other context that needs to be painted in before we move forward?
I would say, so on my profile, I'm a self-proclaimed cringe comedian. So like just some people will watch the videos, including myself sometimes, and be like, that's the cringiest thing I've ever seen. And I think that's kind of the point too. It kind of like drives people to watch it even more. And like, it's just meant to be funny in a certain way, not necessarily like trying to be super serious. But I think in the style that I make the videos, it just comes across as cringy. So I would say I hate the term comedian too, because that makes it sound like I want to get up on stage and talk to a crowd as a stand-up comedian, which I don't. I'd be terrified of that. Who knows if I'll do it in the future, but I put it on my profile boldly as cringe comedian, and everyone always messages me. They're like, when are you coming? Like, when are you going on tour as a comedian? And I'm like, I would get booed off the stage immediately if I did that.
Yeah, you say that, but are you familiar with a fellow named Charlie Barnes?
Yeah, yup. Manitowoc Minute, that guy. Yeah, exactly. I watch all his videos. He's hilarious.
He's got like a thriving stand-up career now. So I'm good friends with the guy who often travels with him. Shout out Josh. And I got a chance to chat with him a little bit when he came to town. Nice. And yeah, his comedy career is very successful, and it all came from like doing online skits. Like It seems like that's a good trajectory to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. I also follow pretty closely this guy Dude Dad out of
I met him that same
Fort
night
Collins.
too. Yeah, he's funny as well.
Yeah, so I've messaged him briefly. We've chatted a little bit, how he was like a big inspiration for a lot of the videos as well. And he does kind of like outdoor comedy, family oriented, which is hilarious. And at some point I'd love to connect with him, but it's a good kind of model to follow and inspiration in the realm of comedy. But
was there a point where you went from like, I'm just fucking around on the internet to being like, oh shit, there's a career in this? Like, was there a specific turning point for you?
Yeah, so I've been a teacher the past 5 years up until the end of last school year in June. I was teaching 7th and 8th grade and love it. I love teaching. I love working with children, and I was teaching science, which is one of my favorite subjects. And I was making videos that whole time. So I started making videos back in 2020, beginning of COVID. I was posting montages of my hikes, right? And that was just kind of like a part-time for fun thing up until the beginning of this year. I moved to Boston, got this long-term or kind of like filling in for a maternity leave position at a school near Boston. And I was cranking out like a video a day while also teaching and doing it, all of this together. I was kind of wiped out by the end of the workday. And that kind of led into the summer. I started working with brands a little bit more leading into the summer. And I was like, wait, this is actually something that I could potentially make work full time. And I decided to tell my school I'm not coming back at the beginning of this school year. I gave them a good like month and a half notice. I'm like, I'm going to try this out, see how it goes. But I won't be there next year. And so I kind of dove headfirst into it, and it's been going really well so far. So.
What is it like to be making videos like these while teaching 7th and 8th graders? Because if anyone will find that, it's 7th and 8th graders.
Yes, that was always challenging. So my coworkers, we would all, they loved the videos. They would see them I told them about it. Like, I do this on the side. And there was one school day when one of my 8th graders came in, and I just hear Mr. Lyons, like, yelling down the hall. He's like, first, like, right before the bell was going to ring, and he storms into my classroom, and he's like, I found you on TikTok. And I've always liked to keep my videos kind of family friendly. I don't really swear in my videos. I don't really talk about anything that's, you know, illegal or whatnot. And so I always knew that my kids would find them, right? Whether or not I liked it. And so that day came, word got around. Every student that came into my room was like, you know, you're on TikTok, right? I'm like, I know. Thanks for telling me. And like the next day, it was like nothing happened, right? They came in, they got over it. My rule for them was like, listen, I'm happy you watch the videos. Like, I hope you find them funny, but I can't really interact with you on social media because you're my student, right? And so that was kind of the boundary I drew. And the kids were cool with it, and we kind of continued on from there, and it worked out. But it's definitely kind of an interesting mix, like being a teacher and a content creator, because you know those kids are going to find it, and you got to make sure you're kind of being smart about it.
Sure.
I've had people at the place I work that have, like, when we were in office especially, there was 1 or 2 people that joined and, like, were on the office floor and would see my name in an email. And it was the weirdest thing in the world because, like, we're not appropriate on this at all. And thinking about, like, them listening was terrifying.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely, like, an interesting thing to navigate. Right?
Yeah.
So.
They must have idolized you because, like, obviously being popular on social media is going to get you a lot of attention in general, but I imagine that age range is especially impressionable by somebody who's like a superstar on social media. Did you notice that? Were you getting treated differently once you started to blow up?
I wouldn't say by students, you mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say treated differently. I honestly think my content didn't resonate with middle school kids whatsoever.
That makes sense.
I think the fact that I had a decent amount of followers was the only thing they cared about.
Do you think they thought you were lame?
I don't know. I wouldn't say lame. They probably just like looked at me like they look at like a dad, you know? Like something, it's like they call it like boomer humor, you know? Like that's how I look at like my dad's generation and how they kind of banter. So they're like, they watch my videos and they're like, oh, that's cool. It's got a lot of views, but like, what does this all mean? Right? And so it got to a point where like they just kind of lost interest. And it turns out I do get a lot of like moms and dads and like people from my parents' generation watching my videos. Like if you look, the average age is like mid 30s to like 60s, right?
Okay.
And I was at CU Boulder the other day. Just like there was like this skiing thing going on in the road. And I had like 3 CU students come up to me and they're like, my dad watches your videos all the time. Like, can I send a pic to him? I'm like, yeah, tell him I say hey. And so that's really aged me a bit. I was at CU. I'm like I'm 28 years old. Everyone's like, is this guy like 15 or 60? They can't tell my age. And I felt old on that campus.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, yeah, is this what it's like to be my dad's generation?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. We should probably talk about backpacking.
Yeah, I kind of want to get into. Well, I want to hear the story that we got tipped off on.
Yeah, that was where I was going to start, so feel free to take it.
Sure. We heard a story about right before, well, we'll get into that part next. We heard a story about you forgetting your tent in Stehekin.
Yes.
On the PCT.
Did you know this question was coming?
I didn't know specifically that one, but I got a little tip that something around that time was going to come up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So can you tell us the story about forgetting your tent and the hilarity that followed?
Yeah. So I'm going to lead that off with the fact that I was in an emotional state in this moment because this was when I was starting the PCT in 2021. I was going southbound at the time, and leading up to that hike, I had gotten injured. So my IT band was really inflamed. I had a bunch of fluid building up between that and around my knee. And so I wasn't able to walk more than a few miles. And so I was easing into this hike. I met this awesome trail family, and we hiked from Harts Pass down to Stehekin. And I made it. I was popping like 6 Advil a day. It was not sustainable. I was feeling less and less optimistic as I went along. And so we were about to start off from Stehekin through the Glacier Peak Wilderness, like going southbound. It was one of the hardest stretches of the trail. I was like I was panicked. I didn't know like how it was going to go. And so we took off. I was really stiff because we took a few days in Stehekin to rest, and my trail family kind of stayed with me, which was awesome. But we left. My knee was super painful coming out of town. And at one point I got this shocking pain in my knee, so I had to sit down, right? I literally had to stop walking. I was like a couple miles in. It was crushing for sure. And I was digging through my pack, kind of looking for Advil, right? And I realized my tent wasn't in there, which was one, tragic, and two, just adding on to these emotions that I had. And it was at that point, because my knee was super painful, I was like, I have to go back. There's no way I'm going 110 miles. One, with the food in my pack, and two, limping on this knee, only making it worse, I'm sure. And so I was like crushed. I was super emotional. My tent was missing. So I waited, and this person I was hiking Long Way, who was recently on the show, I heard, came up, and I just like burst out crying. It was not good. And
she left out that detail.
Yeah, she was kind.
Yeah. Well, I don't mind saying that. It was a rough time for sure. And I like broke the news to her, like, oh, I think I forgot. Like, or no, she must have broken the news to me. This is how it went. This was before I think I realized my tent was missing. She broke the news to me that somebody we were hiking with, Donuts, who was way up ahead, probably like a half mile ahead on the trail, really fast, strong hiker, had my tent in his pack, knowing that I had forgotten it. And when we got to camp that night, they were going to surprise me with it. And I knew I had to catch up to him, otherwise I'd never see my tent again. And so I don't know what it was, adrenaline, something. I got up on my feet, knee still like throbbing, I could tell, but I just started running. And the pain, I think it added to my tears, right? I was like crying, running down the trail, yelling out Donuts, like at the top of my lungs. My heart was beating like 1,000,000 miles a minute. I finally catch up to him, and I'm like throwing myself on his shoulders, like, I need my tent. Like, I'm getting off trail. Like, I can't do this. And so I think he was just like confused, like not knowing if I was upset about the tent or my knee. And so once I kind of broke the news to him, they were super like, I think they were really kind of apologetic, which is like, they didn't have to be, right? I forgot my tent. They were doing me a favor bringing it with them, but they're like, I think they felt bad that I was in such pain and I had to get off the trail. Like, I knew at that point that they gave my tent, and I kind of like wallowed back to Stehekin, got a cinnamon roll, and then found a ride on some random person's boat and was able to get back to Seattle and fly back to the East Coast. But that was just like a whirlwind of a 24 hours, and yeah, something I'll never forget for sure.
Yeah, what a turn of events. That sucks. Like, the whole, obviously, knowing that you have to get off trail is crushing, knowing that you have to run in pain the opposite direction of where you're trying to go. But at least you got to end at the bakery. And I want to hear more, maybe, is there a good story attached to getting a boat hitched? That sounds like something straight out of Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. So I got back to Stehekin. I was just kind of like sitting on the porch there right by the marina and just thinking about like, oh, I gotta like, how am I gonna get back? Because Stehekin, for those that don't know, is like a really remote town on the trail in the North Cascades, and the only way out of there is like 20-mile hike, seaplane, or like a 4-hour ferry ride, something like that. And so I'm like, oh, okay, how do I like get out of here? Because I knew my time on the trail was done. I had given it like 3 opportunities for my knee to get better. I wasn't gonna keep taking Advil. And so I'm like, okay, I guess I'll like go to the general store, book a ferry for the next morning. And as I was in line, I got a tap on my shoulder. It was this guy who was with his daughter just vacationing on Lake Chelan, and they were in Stehekin for the weekend. And he was like, hey, you trying to get to Chelan the next day, which is the town you ferry to? And I was like, yeah, I'm here to book a ferry. And he's like, we've got a boat. Like, we can just give you a ride if you want to meet us at the dock at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. And I was super grateful. It was like one of those moments where you're like, this is super cool, right? Like, the trail provides, this is like the best kind of trail magic. I was in such a dark point, and like something like this is just what I needed. And so the next morning, met him at the dock at 6 a.m. He drove me all the way across the lake, like twice as fast as the ferry would. And I was able to get a bus to Seattle from one of the towns around there. But was just kind of like a blessing to see that and have that happen in that moment. So
imagine that's not a cheap ferry ride. I know everything in that area is expensive.
Yeah, I think it was like $60, something like that. Yeah.
Just keeps twisting the knife.
Hiker budget too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump back, because that was every bit that we hoped it would be. But let's jump back to the AT, because that came prior. When did you start? Were you going northbound or southbound in 2019?
I went north. I started March 10th. So it was actually a really good year weather-wise.
I started March 4th.
You were 2019?
Yeah. That's what I was trying to math out. I started March 4th.
Okay. All right.
I was very fast.
You were, yeah. I remember seeing
slowed down.
your photos, and you were cooking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my one claim to fame, is the south of the AT.
Just flew.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, March 10th I started. It was cold. I was very nervous. I had never done a through hike before. The longest hike I had done was like 40 miles in the Whites at that camp I was working at. So it was all new to me.
What made you choose the AT?
Close to home. I was working in New Hampshire. I met a bunch of AT hikers, and I had heard socially it's a really good trail to hike, and there's just a lot of culture on it. And I think I was under the impression, like, if this goes south, like, I'm always like relatively close to home, right?
Yeah.
So I can always get back. So that was kind of my thought process. And I don't know, I always wondered why I didn't just do like the long trail or something to start off. But I wanted like a big adventure. I had just gotten out of grad school, and so I was kind of ready to take a break from school for a while and just get out in the woods.
Did you go to grad school for teaching?
Teaching, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
When we started, it was very cold in Georgia. How was it for you on the first, like, beginning days, weeks on trail with the cold snap and just getting into the groove?
That was like eye-opening. I had like a 20-degree bag, which was, it was warm enough. I would just layer up and make sure I was like super warm, but I sleep pretty cold. And so I had to make sure when I got to Hiawassee, it's been a while, I forget these town names.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah.
They blur very quickly.
Yeah. I had to get a couple more layers, but I met a group of people right off the bat, which I guess isn't too unheard of on the AT, but they were super supportive as well. We were all in the same boat of like, other than one person who hiked the long trail, this was our first big hike, right? So we could kind of sympathize with each other and get ourselves through the tough times. And I think that camaraderie and socialization in the beginning was everything I needed. Because I don't like solitude. And I think that's part of the reason I haven't done maybe the CDT.
That's how I am, yeah.
I like the people on the trail and being with a group of people. If I'm hiking alone for more than a couple days, I start to go crazy. So,
I cry a lot.
Yeah, it's not good. I'm like, how do people do this? Like the show Alone, for example.
Yeah.
Like I would be out in the first 24 hours. So people are always like, wow, you must be like really outdoorsy and really like being out in like wild areas alone. And I'm like, quite the opposite.
Yeah. Would you describe yourself as an extrovert? Because she describes herself as an introvert. I have my hesitations about that.
I'm very good at masking.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'm relatively extroverted.
Okay.
It didn't always used to be the case. But yeah, relative to other people, I'd say so.
Yeah. Were you the guy at camp making everyone laugh? Like, were you doing these skits before they were being filmed or anything like that?
Yeah, I've always been like a big banterer, and like in the friend group I try to be like the clown. I was never like that in school, like I said, with a big group of people. Like I wasn't like the class clown or anything.
Would you say you have a clown mouth?
Clown mouth?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Just like you're funny.
Oh, I thought you meant like a big mouth.
No.
She's doing a callback to an old episode. We had a guy on Dirtmonger who describes the chapped area around the asshole as his clown mouth.
I thought it meant he was funny. He shouldn't have given it away. I want him to say yes.
Depending on the meaning, I'd say yes. But yeah, I'd like to think I have a lot of like one-liners, and I find that just my mannerisms can sometimes be funny, or it's just the people I'm around gas me up and I'm not actually funny. So who knows? Yeah. But I had a bunch of really close friends on the AT in that beginning section, and we had a fun time.
What were some of like the biggest fuck ups that happened?
Oh, the bear bag hanging was like probably number one. I hung my bag so much on this, like in the South on the AT. And there was one time I literally had to scale the tree and like hit it with a stick. There's a video. I hiked with this guy. I don't know if you've heard of him, Aquaman. He hiked the AT southbound in 2021, I think, in the winter. And it was...
what's his non-trail name?
Scott Beneroff.
Yeah.
So he was like one of my best buds on the AT.
Okay. Right.
We hiked like to like Daleville together. We were roommates in New Hampshire after that. And he has a video of me like scaling this tiny tree, like this, like, probably like a 2-inch diameter tree. And it's like bending. It's fully bending. And I'm like trying to swap my bear bag because I did like the PCT hang, probably incorrectly. And I was like swatting it with a stick. And he's just dying laughing in the background. And I'm like, I look back at it and I'm like, this is funny. But the laughter makes it even funnier.
Yeah.
But yeah, bear bags were probably my biggest fuck up.
You mentioned that you had a very good time in the southern portion of the AT. Are there any standout stories, whether on trail or in town? We'll pretend like your kids aren't listening. Your students aren't listening.
Yeah.
They probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Oh, there was this one time in Hiawassee. We all split this is like very early on. We all split it was like the Budget Inn. I think we split a hotel room there. And we just filled like the bathtub with water and just soaked it. We just all sat in it, soaked our feet, and got like a bunch of beers. And just like sat in there for like 2 hours. The water was like black. It was disgusting, but it felt so phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so we just sat there and kind of like bantered and just drank a ton of beer. Went after going to like the brewery in town. And so we came back there, did the whole bathtub thing, which probably seems insane to non-hikers.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool. Another one was at Fontana Dam. We took a 0 at the Fontana Hilton, and there was this guy there. I forget his trail name. Snow Cream. He was like an older dude, and he all night was like shuffling around the shelter in like down booties, and we could just all night hear his feet just like shuffling along the floor, and he was just kind of like pacing back and forth and like going through his food. And we were talking to him the next day. Really cool guy, but he was just like the joke of the trail for us, going through the Smokies and into like Virginia, like all the way up through there. So that was kind of something that sticks out a little bit.
Did you ever get the origin to Snow Cream?
It was something to do with like Italian ice. Okay. Like he like ran like a shaved or Italian ice stand for like a lot of his life.
Yeah.
And so he started going by the name. Apparently that's a term people use for Italian ice or something.
Okay.
Snow Cream. But
that's what they say.
I find sometimes the more outlandish the trail name, the more normal the story attached to it.
Yeah.
I bet like a Pussy Thunder, like the trail name was like, yeah, I was with my cat in a thunderstorm or something like that. Like, okay.
Speaking of trail names, how did you get Schmutz?
Schmutz was given to me by Aquaman as well, or Scott Beneroff, just before the Fontana Dam. Thank you. We were camping out, and I had a really heavy tent on the AT. It was like 5.5 pounds, and I set it up like every night, and I would just lift the thing off the ground and just shake it above my head for like 30 seconds. And just, I kept saying I was getting the schmutz out of it because I thought that was like a funny term. I didn't even like, I just used it for dirt, right? Which apparently it does mean dirt in like
Yiddish,
yeah. And so from then on out, we were like sitting around a fire, and Aquaman's like, your trail name is Schmutz because you keep saying that. So every time we get to camp, I just shake my tent out. And there's some videos of it. It's pretty funny, but I don't know. I feel like there are better trail names out there.
I don't know. I think that's a good example of one where the trail name isn't maybe the most standout, but I think that's a funny story. Whereas like the funny trail names oftentimes have normal stories. Mm-hmm. Which, have you seen that consistency?
Yeah, I'm in my mind, I'm thinking about Ball Flap Story, I'm thinking about Fancy Feast, I'm thinking about a guy on the PCT named Cockblock Moses. Like, yeah, there's just some great names.
Fancy Feast is the best of them all.
This was a girl, Zach had lost a pair of his socks on the CT, and we just like, for funsies, where like if someone finds them, like You can come on the show.
I knew where they were. I posted a map on Backpacker Radio's Instagram saying, like, if somebody finds this, we came up with some prize for it. I forget what it
was. So she came on the show. Her trail name was Fancy Feast. And we're like, why is that your trail name? And apparently in a hiker box, she had found, like, some cans of food. And she started eating it. And it turns out it was cat food. And we're like, so what'd you do? And she was like, well, I was already eating it, so.
What? My question is, why is there cat food in a hiker box?
A lot of mysteries. Yeah. A lot of unknowns there.
Probably from Pussy Thunder.
Right?
Yeah. Were you posting on Instagram? I don't think TikTok was around in 2019.
No, it was. They asked me. They emailed me if I wanted to be a TikToker, and I was like, I don't sing.
Yeah. It was like
worst decision I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
I was posting on Instagram on the AT, just kind of like static posts, and that was about it, like almost blog style. But
were they attempts at being funny or just normal?
No, just posts? Like for family, really, and like family and friends. It'd be like mileage day, like this is what happened, like very standard, like this is what's happening on the trail, like updating. So stories, like I said, like comedy has never been a thing in my life, so this is all very new to me.
Yeah. What a wild turn of events.
Right.
What is the most embarrassing moment you have from the AT?
From the AT.
Or PCT, either trail.
I'm trying to think. Let's see. On the PCT, let's see. I mean, losing my tent was very much an embarrassing thing, or like leaving it in Stehekin. I'm trying to think of other embarrassing things. Can't really think of many right now.
You
Let's come back to that.
Put a pin in that one.
Yeah.
And so, remind us, what were your PCT years? 21?
Yeah, 21. I made it like 80 miles. I was going northbound to the border, turned back, hung out in Mazama, and then went to Stehekin, and that's about as far as I made it. So 2022 was an interesting year because I was planning southbound, right? But the snow was pretty crazy on my start date. I didn't really want to deal with that going up from Harts Pass north. And so I started in Ashland, Oregon. So I ended up going north to the Canadian border and then flew back to Ashland and went south. So
how is that for someone who doesn't like solitude? Because I imagine you weren't really in a bubble.
I was terrified, yeah. So the beginning, I was like, this is going to be rough. I was being passed by like every northbounder doing like 35-mile days.
Were you in the Nobo bubble?
Pretty much, because I started July 6th.
Okay.
So it was like the early end of the bubble.
Yeah.
And all like the really fast hikers.
Right.
And so I was only doing I was planning on doing like 7 or 8 miles a day at the start because my knee was still kind of bothering me. And I had gone to PT, had done all that. I had stretches that I could do, and I was able to manage and quickly met 2 people who were also flipping, and they started in Sayad Valley. So they were only a few days, like 5 days in, and they were doing shorter miles. So I'm like, okay, I can up the mileage a little bit and keep up with these guys because they're cool.
Yeah.
And one of them was actually a guy who was posting, I watched his YouTube videos on the AT because he hiked in 2018. And so leading up to my AT hike, I watched his YouTube videos, met him on the PCT like day 1 and immediately like didn't know where I recognized him from, but I realized quickly, like I heard his name and realized, wait a minute, I watched your YouTube videos. Like that's sick. And we ended up hiking most of the Ashland to the Canadian border section together.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Who was that?
His name's Hot Sauce, trail name Hot Sauce. His name's Jake Link. Okay. Really cool guy. And then his wife as well, Gracie. So
that's one thing I've heard from people as I've gotten further into a trail. Like there's a time where you're doing a hike and 4 or 5 months in, you get towards like the last third of the trail. And I've heard people say once or twice that that's a hard spot to have to make friends in because everyone's already got their trail groups and they're kind of all tired. So they're not really in the make new friends mode. They're in the, this is my bubble, I don't really want to talk to anyone else mode. How is that for you being in the middle of it?
It was very tough, but luckily we found this group that were also flip-flopping. That was a big flip-flop year because of the snow. So it was at first I was like, I'm not going to meet anyone. Like this is going to be a solitary experience. But I met them, those 2, and a few others, and we made this tramily that was like a flip-flop tramily. and kind of rode that for a long time, and that eased me into the trail a lot and made me forget kind of about the pain in my knee. And I finally got to a point where I'm like, I can do this physically, right?
Yeah. And
mentally, now that I'm with these people. But we got to the Canadian border, and a few of the people we had met towards the end there were Nobos, right? So they're ending their hike. And I'm like, I still have, 1,600 miles of California left. And so I flew back to Ashland, and there was a fire from Sayad Valley to Ashland was closed. So I had to get a ride to Etna and start south from there. And starting from there, after leaving the North Cascades and being in NorCal, was such a crazy experience. I was alone. I didn't see a hiker for 4 days, like another person for 4 days, after being like surrounded by this supportive tramway in the north. And so I was crushed. I definitely was super emotional at the time, and like I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not going to hike all of California on my own. And fortunately, there was a woman who I was hiking with northbound, a trail named Trash Croc, or TC. And we were able to convince her. She was only going to do Oregon and Washington. We were able to convince her to do all of California as well. And so she ended up flying down, met me in Dunsmuir, and we started hiking southbound together. And that's when things started to like turn around emotionally. And then when we got to Sonora Pass, there was a crazy snowstorm. We're going into the Sierra at this point. And we spent 3 days to wait out this storm at this Trail Angel cabin in Pinecrest. And we met a group of hikers there that became what we called the Sobo Express. And from there on, we hiked the rest of the trail with a few of these people and had like the time of our lives. So if you're out there alone and you don't want to be alone, I'm sure you'll meet up with somebody at some point. So like, keep pushing is the story there.
Yeah, it's a good lesson.
Yeah.
Have you speculated on what may have come of your journey if you didn't meet a small group of people to hike with southbound from there?
If I didn't meet up with TC or that group, I don't think I would have made it. I think I would have gotten off trail in like Tahoe.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What part of it gives you the scaries? Like, is it just so much time alone, like drives you nuts? Is it nighttime, twig snapping, like animals?
I think it's just I get in my head. Like, I need to be able to like communicate with someone and just kind of like pass the time.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, even like music, podcasts, those don't really help. Like, I was able to call somebody when I got a little bit of service, but that section there wasn't a ton of service. So I think it's not so much like the wildlife. It's just being in my own head and not having an outlet for like ideas and thoughts.
Yeah. It makes sense. We evolved as a collaborative species. Like, to remove that element for a lot of people is like all the alarm bells start to go off.
Yeah. I have to distract myself. When I did the Ozark Highlands Trail, I listened to like 300 hours of a podcast on drop shipping. I've never drop shipped in my life.
Now you can.
But I needed like a rabbit hole to like go down and obsess over, so I would forget that I had like no one to talk to because we hiked separately all day.
I want to know, you must be pretty determined to through hike, because after the debacle of 2021 with your knee pain, for you to go back and be starting the trail with more knee pain, like obviously that's the rap sheet of somebody who like really wants to be out there through hiking. What is your motivation for doing this, especially as somebody that doesn't like love to be by themselves?
I think the motivation is just like the challenge, or not the challenge, just like an accomplishment, right? So going in, I was coming out of grad school. I was like, I want to do something where I can look back and be like, whoa, I did that, right? So I think it's not necessarily like challenging myself physically. It's more just like having that accomplishment and saying like, if I can do this, I can do other things, right? It wasn't like I want to go out there and push like 40s every day, just to see if I can, right?
Yeah.
It was like, I want to go out there and have this experience that I can tell my kids about, or tell people back home.
Yeah, similar for me as well.
Yeah.
Have you ever shit your pants?
No.
Have you ever come close?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Oh jeez. I try to block like the instances from my mind. I don't know if I can pinpoint an exact time, but there have been times, diet on trail, right? It's I'm eating like dry ramen and like oatmeal, and so there were times where my stomach was really not cooperating, And especially in Northern California, I was hiking with TC, and like every day I was getting this like shooting pain in my stomach, and I couldn't tell, like, I didn't know what it was. And I think right now that it was the altitude, because we were getting towards closer to the Sierra. We were going up in elevation. So I think that might have been the culprit. But there were times in that stretch, it was like a 2-week period where I couldn't eat food. And there were times where I had to like run off into the woods real quick and like do my business.
You mentioned dry ramen, and I've heard people talk about eating dry ramen like it's potato chips.
Yeah.
Can't get behind it. Do you season it? Put anything on it?
Just like the chicken seasoning, like the flavoring, right?
You put the packet on it while it's dry?
I won't use all of it, but I'll like evenly distribute some of the seasoning. And I just hate cooking. Like, I got to, the most I'll do is like boil a little bit of water. And I don't like, I'm like the pickiest eater. So even people on back home are like, you eat only beige foods. And so that carried over to the trail. And I ended up just eating oatmeal for a long time for dinners. And so there was a point like around Tahoe where I was eating like 9 to 10 packets of oatmeal a day, or like in one meal. Like I would just fill this like 700 milliliter pot of oatmeal. I would boil water, I would buy like 2 or 3 boxes of oatmeal.
I was going to say, isn't that the whole box? 10 packets?
Yeah, no, my food bag was like 45% oatmeal.
What's your go-to oatmeal?
Maple brown sugar.
Okay, I'm
100%.
Dinosaur eggs.
Yeah, really?
Have you
I've
had
had that, but I didn't I haven't seen that in years. Is that still a thing?
Yeah, it is. I have some at my house.
In terms of the health value of trail foods, you're doing pretty good. At least there's fiber.
A lot of fiber, yeah. But that, now that I look back, that might have contributed to my stomach pain.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
That makes sense.
Yeah, what other beige foods?
I eat a lot, like Pop-Tarts. I eat a lot of carbs, like bread, bagels, peanut butter, what else? Pastas. Not on trail, though. I didn't really like pasta on trail. I don't know why. But, yeah, even back home, like I'll eat cheese pizza with like maybe 1 or 2 toppings on it, but like nothing extravagant. And I'm a firm believer that like at restaurants, my friend hates me for saying this, but I feel like it should be base options on the menu. Like, for example, a burger. Why do burgers have like this, and this on it? Why can't it just be like, here's a burger, like put whatever you want on it, but you have to tell what you want on it, right?
Like
I want the base, right?
Yeah.
And my friend made up a good point. He's like, so you want just Subway, right? So like Subway for every restaurant. I'm like, sure, if that's what it takes.
So yeah, what, you being picky, what are your go-to meals in town?
Burgers for one. I really
without all the toppings.
It's like cheese and bacon, but that's only if I want those 2 things, right? If it should be the base, and like I'll tell you if I want bacon or cheese, right? I'll let it be known.
You want it to be additive, not subtract.
Right. Because I always feel like such a nerd for being like, can I get this without this, and this, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you putting me through this?
Yeah.
Like, why are you embarrassing me? Like, I'll just say, like, you're gonna seem really cool if you say I want a burger with like 7 things on it, right? Because you're gonna seem adventurous. It's not like a detriment to you if you're like, can I have all these things, right? Why is it like a problem for me to take them off?
I love that. Is there, this might be a hard one to think on the spot for, but I love a sentence that starts with, I'm a firm believer that. Do you have any other like hot stances that you're a firm believer of? Yeah,
I'm a firm believer that my base weight isn't going to make it, so I can't finish a trail. I don't even measure my base weight. It's like, it's one of those things where it's not that like, I want my pack to be light, right? Like I don't want to carry a lot of weight, but like I don't really measure like ounces. Like I like logged into lighter pack once, and then I just never really did anything with it. So I'm like, what's it gonna matter? Like I'm still gonna be walking those distances, right? Yeah. And this is a personal thing. Like nothing against people who want to get their pack as light as possible, right? It's just for me. I'm like, sure, I'll go for lighter gear, right? But I'm not gonna like count my ounces, because I'm going to walk that distance whether or not I have the weight on my back or not, right?
I mean, you started the AT with a 5.5 pound pack, so from there you can go anywhere.
I had a heavy pack.
I imagine at this point you can get whatever gear you want. Have you built your dream big 3 or overall pack?
I'd say yes. So like I carry a 2-person tent. Like that's one of the things like I need.
You're
that
tall
space.
Guy. What are you, like 6'3"?
6'2".
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of tents are built for like max 6'1", right? Or 6 feet. And so I'm always like hitting the ends with my sleeping bag or my head. And so I use like a tarp tent, 2-person, which is a light tent, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're inherently light. And I think that's one of the tents that was long, like really long and really lightweight. So because like I had that 5.5, I'm like, I got to get rid of this for my next hike because that was weighing me down for sure.
Have you ever tried the Durston tent?
Durston, I've not. No.
Those ones, they like go on a diagonal. Is there a different thing? How do I explain this in words that make sense? You have the diagonal pitch.
Yeah.
Where it makes it longer.
Yeah, whereas most trekking poles like kind of venture out in the middle. Mm-hmm. It makes a weird diagonal shape, which allows for more interior space.
So you sleep diagonal in the tent?
So never actually used it. I can't speak.
Yeah, we haven't used it. We had him on, and he was talking about it. It sounded cool because it was like they just turned 2 things, and it made it bigger inside.
I'll have to check it out for sure.
I know Z-Packs also. I'm not sure if they still make it, but they released it a year or 2 ago. A tent specifically for tall people. I think it was.
Was it the Plexamid or something? Like the
but it was
pointy one?
Yeah, but it had XL built into the name, I want to say.
Okay.
So another thing to check out.
Yeah, for sure.
What else are you rocking?
I use just like a Thermarest inflatable. And then I had Enlightened Equipment quilt, which was like a big change.
Yeah.
Because I had like a 20-degree mummy bag for the AT, but then I switched over to a quilt, and like I don't think I'll ever go back.
Yeah. It's nice to have the versatility, being able to have a quilt or something that actually zips up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned not wanting to do the CDT because of the solitude. Mm-hmm. Do you have a next trail on the bucket list? Because usually somebody who's as determined to start a thru hike after failing the previous year, going into it with pain, that's a pretty strong drive from what I've seen. And usually that doesn't just end abruptly. Are there more trails on the bucket list?
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant to start like a trail as long as the AT or PCT, like the CDT. But I've definitely had my eyes set on the long trail and the Colorado trail, like something a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
Still like absolutely beautiful. They're very different from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I find myself back out here in Colorado, then I would definitely try it. But the long trail, having done like the lower 100 miles on the AT, it'd be cool to try that northern part and finish it off.
Mm-hmm.
So those are on my list for sure.
Definitely want to talk about the documentary as well.
Yep.
So give us the full introduction, and then I'll ask my questions from there.
Yeah, so we are releasing a documentary called Sobo Doc, which isn't entirely true at this point because I did a flip-flop hike, but we're going to roll with it anyway because that's what we kind of established it as. Mm-hmm. And we have been making slow but steady progress on that. So when I was on the PCT, I had like a point-and-shoot camera that I would strap to my shoulder strap, and I filmed a lot of the trail and a lot of footage that I don't even remember filming because I haven't seen it. My brother and my good friend are kind of spearheading the editing process of that, and I'm kind of helping navigate like things that happened within the footage and giving context to things, but I'm by no means like a long form video editor. Mm-hmm. I would ruin the video if I did it myself, and so they were graciously like helping me with the project, and they've been on board ever since. They even drove out to the PCT from the East Coast with me in 2021, and then I got off a week later, but they've been super supportive and helpful with the doc, and they work full-time jobs, but they've been putting in a lot of work getting that ready to go, and we're hoping early next year it's released.
Early next year. And you said you're using a point-and-shoot camera?
Yeah, it was a Sony A3400, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you have any background in filming or anything like that?
No.
Yeah. Did you take any crash courses? Because I attempted to do a documentary before the PCT, fell apart for a variety of reasons. But I did spend a little bit of time like just picking the brains of my friends who are smart at video to kind of just like get a few basics in place. Did you do anything like that?
The only resources I really had beforehand were my brother and friend, and I talked to them about like the settings on the camera, what I should focus on in terms of shots while I'm out there. And you can tell, and you will be able to tell when you watch the doc, that like from the beginning towards the end, I think the quality will go up a little bit because I'm figuring things out while I'm out there. Like the beginning, it's probably, I mean, the whole thing didn't really have stabilization. So a lot of the shots with the camera, I did stationary shots. So I wouldn't be like walking with the camera unless it's a vlog shot. I would usually use my phone if I'm doing like scenic shots while I'm actually hiking. And so I'm not really sure what the quality of it's going to be very raw, and that's not due to the fact that I tried to make it raw. It's just due to the fact that I'm not a videographer.
Sure.
And I hope that kind of shows that like it's a more authentic thing. I'm not by no means trying to like release this on Netflix or anything. It's just trying to show my experience.
Yeah.
And I don't expect it to be like a blockbuster style video, right? I just want it to show or highlight like the things that I experienced throughout the trail, and I hope it does that.
I would describe trail documentaries in one of two camps, generally speaking, not always the case, that either it's a documentary about the people that features the trail, or vice versa. It's the trail and then like there's some story intermixed. Does yours fall into one of those two camps?
I would say so. I tried to avoid filming like a lot of people, I would say. So mainly more like the trail and the scenery and like what the experience of like a southbound / flip-flop hike would entail. I felt kind of weird filming with other people around, and I didn't want to like step on anyone's toes or make it awkward at like campsites or anything like that. So when I got comfortable with my trail family, they would definitely make a lot of appearances and be a part of it. But people I would just meet randomly, and I'm sure other people, and you've done some vlogging in the past, so you know.
I get very timid around people.
Yeah, it can be strange, right? Like you meet someone for the first time, they pull out a camera, right? I don't want to be that guy.
Sure.
So I tried to show the people as much as possible, and I would always like ask, like, can I take a little quick clip of like what's around us, and you might be in it, and are you fine with that? And so that was kind of something I had to navigate. I'm sure a lot of people who do docs do, but yeah, I'd say mostly it's a lot of scenic shots and talking to camera about what's going on, and then we're going to have kind of voiceover to go along with it.
Got it.
So.
Are you editing this to be horizontal or vertical?
It is all horizontal. There might be a couple clips that are vertical from like the AT for like flashback scenes and stuff like that, but it was all horizontal on like a point and shoot. So
I find that to be hard when you're like taking videos on trail, because for YouTube it's horizontal, but then for socials it's vertical.
Yep.
And to get a horizontal to be vertical, sometimes it's very hard, but then harder to get vertical to be horizontal.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think a lot of it will be, it's going to be all horizontal, but when we do like social media promotion for it, there are a lot of clips that I have from my phone that are vertical as well. So we might do some snippets from there. So.
Will this be funny? Should someone go into this expecting to laugh?
That's a good question. I was not super into like the comedic videos before the trail, so I don't think the humor is going to be as much of a theme in this as people will hope. But I think it'll give context to my life outside of comedy. And hopefully that's something people might be interested in learning about. Because as you were saying when I walked in today, you're like, it's so weird to see you not on an Instagram like video, right? And not in your character.
Yeah. And I hate being that guy, because we get people coming in here all the time being like, it's so weird to see you when I only hear you. Like, it's kind of trite, but yeah.
Sure.
It's true.
Yeah.
It could be funny though to have like really nice scenic clips and like, you know, whatever it might be, but like a dub over of you with B-roll audio that's like just like narrating it in a very dry way.
Oh, yeah.
Like I feel like there's a way where it's like it just makes it funny, you know?
Yeah, and there might be something in the future where I go out and do another hike and I do that, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of make it a different type of experience.
Yeah.
Do you have other hikes on your horizon?
We just touched on that one.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I
so
went
we
to
were
pee. No, you don't need to tell me. I'll listen to it. I'm sure they sound very fun.
Yeah, they're going to be a blast, hopefully.
Sorry.
Gave myself up there.
Yeah. And you gave us the release timeline. Say it again.
Early next year is our goal.
Okay.
Again, that all depends, because my brother and my friend, they do work full time. So we're trying to like, and we live in different states. So when we all meet up to edit, it's like a big thing, and hopefully we can get a lot done, but there's no guarantees for sure. So
is it tough to direct someone? Because I know that just passing your footage off to someone and then having them construct your story can be really challenging, like, because they don't know the inner workings of it. And you almost have to give the feedback. Like, it's hard to give them the video and the story outline. It's almost easier for them to give you like a cut, and then you'd be like, XYZ needs to be changed.
Yeah, so what we did is we cropped out all the shots that we're going to use pre-edit, right? So it's like 6 hours of footage, and we got to like chop that down. And what I did is I gave my brother my journal from the trail. So I had a written journal. I gave that to him, used that as context, and we have a doc going where I can fill in holes or explain certain scenes as to like what's going on through my head in that moment, right? Because they weren't there. And so they give this list of shots, and I can kind of type in, be like, this is what was going through my head, this is what was happening, this is kind of the theme of this section of trail. So yeah.
What would be the like peak of the film? Let's say the whole film has this story it's telling. What would you say is like the big huzzah?
The big huzzah. I think so. Like I said earlier, it's going to be a lot of like scenic shots, and I want to highlight like just like the beauty of the PCT. Like the AT is great in its own aspect, but the PCT is just like vast, and like every turn you take is like gorgeous. And I found myself just filming every little piece of that. So I want to highlight like the beauty of the trail itself, but I also want to break each section down, and each section will have a theme. So whether it's my injury in the beginning, fire closures, right? Meeting people like the Sobo Express, and then kind of the finale, right? Realizing that like I actually did this thing. All of these things were hurdles I had to overcome. So we're kind of breaking it like that. Like each section will have its own peak and own story, and then it'll kind of culminate in getting to the Mexican border and being like, wow, that actually happened, and all these things led up to it.
How'd you manage your knee?
My knee, how did it get better?
Yeah.
So the first like week and a half, every like quarter mile before it started to get painful, I would stretch my hamstring.
Every quarter mile?
I would for the very beginning. Yeah. I would say it started to get longer and longer as I went. I would like go up to a half mile, then a mile, then every 2 miles, right? Until it didn't hurt. But I would stretch my hamstring, and then I would use my trekking pole and just like roll out my upper legs, like my quads, hamstrings.
Yeah.
And that worked. So
that's dedication.
Yeah.
If I'm stopping every quarter mile in the beginning of the hike, I'm starting to question, like, can I do this?
Yeah.
thing?
So
it's
when
like watching a kettle.
Yeah. Right.
When I met like Hot Sauce and Gracie, we trail named Little Legs. We would hike at just different paces throughout the day. I would get the miles in. It would just take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Right. So I would be like, I'm going to stop and stretch. And they'd be like, all right, we'll see you later.
Yeah.
And so I would get to camp a little bit later. But it got to a point where I could stretch more and more infrequently. And then it just totally went away, which was awesome.
So you didn't have to do that for the full hike?
No.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
Is the knee pain a concern for your hikes moving forward?
No, I haven't experienced it since.
Huh.
So
the trail helped to work out
it did.
issue?
I think like movement is one of the best therapies, right?
Yeah.
And you can that's kind of what I saw this physical therapist, and they were saying like, listen, it's painful, like, but you're just being stationary, like you're sitting in your classroom like doing that. I go to the gym every once in a while, but like you're not hiking every day, and your body will acclimate to that. And so I think that's kind of what it was. It's just the constant movement, and that worked itself out.
Yeah. Tell me about front country apparel.
Yeah, so I'm bummed. I didn't wear the shirt today. I have like...
We'll Photoshop it in.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. It's kind of a little brand that I started through my videos. I did a video about kind of the outdoorsy guy who moves to a city. And I love living in a city. I live pretty much in Boston. But I also like to get out and hike, right? And so living in the city, I feel like there's a lot of inaccessibility, I guess, to nature, right? And so one of the lines in my videos was, welcome to the front country, right? Like talking to his friend in the video, right? It's like, I'm in the city. This isn't the back country. We're now in the front country. So having that outdoorsy mindset, but also living in like an urban setting, it's like you can still have that sense of adventure, and kind of live in the city.
Yeah.
And so front country apparel was kind of the way to get that word out, I guess.
Have you roasted Boston?
I have not.
No?
I think I did. I don't think I posted it though. It was like, this isn't good. Yeah.
Have you ever had one that you didn't post because you felt like you were going too far? You mentioned that your comedy is family friendly, so I know that you wouldn't like take a dig that was inappropriate per se. But.
Yeah. I wouldn't say. I don't think there were any instances where I'm like, this is too like aggressive.
Yeah.
There are plenty where I'm like, I'm gonna hold off on posting this. Like I have like 20 to 25 videos in my drafts, like that I could post, and it's kind of like a backlog if I ever need to like post something. But it's never been because it's like too aggressive, I'd say.
Got it.
It's just like I don't really love it.
Yeah.
But other people, sometimes those are the best videos, right?
Sure.
You post them and they're like, I did not expect that to do as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So. What have been ones that surprised you with how well they've done?
So early on in February, I posted a video about like that friend who shows up at your door in the morning is like, we're going for a hike. And so I was like, pretend on the phone outside this dude's house. And I was like, he was like, yeah, I have like a call or like a work meeting in like 30 minutes. And I'm like, you're going to have to reschedule that. We're going hiking. And I didn't think it would be funny at all. Like I didn't like the video. It wasn't nearly one of my favorites. And it got like 5 million views. Huh. And it was like insane. That's kind of what like catapulted it and made it start to grow.
Have you had the opposite scenario where you're like, this is fucking fire and it flops?
Yeah. It's humbling.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's, I'm trying to think of one in particular. There's one where like people who have maps on their wall, like similar. I have maps on my wall in my room. Like I filmed it with a map on my wall.
If you were here 2 weeks ago,
I literally just looked that way and forgot that we did things.
Right. Yeah.
And it was just kind of poking fun. Like I live in the city. I'm like, but I have a map of like the 8,000 meter peaks in the Himalaya on my wall. And I live in Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm like, this map is just a symbol that like we could go on a 1 month expedition at any moment. Huh. And I was dying laughing at that. Sometimes I make myself crack up, and then it got like not nearly as many views as the other ones.
Yeah.
So.
What's your favorite one that you've made? Like which one is by far and away the funniest to you?
Oh, I've made so many now. It's like probably I really like a lot of like the skiing ones. So I've done a lot with skiing and snowboarding. So I did one where it was like that guy you run into at like one of like the fancy resorts, right, in Colorado. And it was just kind of, his name was like Conrad or something. And that character I thought was really funny, and people really resonated with that. So that's probably my top. Yeah.
I know I've come across at least a couple. Do you have an estimate for how many of your videos are poking fun at through hikers or ultralight purists or anything like that?
I haven't done a ton of like through hiking specific ones recently.
Is that too niche now because of how big your audience is?
Almost. Yeah. Like I've done guy who just got off finished a through hike. That was one of them I did. I've done like ultra running ones. I've done.
Are you a runner?
No. The opposite, actually.
Yeah.
Same. I'm a sitter.
Ultra sitter.
So yeah, I would like to do. It would be cool to do a series on like the PCT, the AT, and the CDT.
Yeah.
Like people who hike those trails specifically.
Yeah.
And I think I've scripted the AT one. I just haven't gotten around to filming it yet.
Yeah.
But they are a little niche now.
Yeah.
So that's been a challenge, like finding things that can apply to a large demographic of people.
Insert apologies if you've already done this one. I haven't watched the whole catalog.
That's fair.
But have you, and if you haven't, can you do one for people who host a podcast?
I could do that. I haven't done it yet.
We could help you with that.
The closest I've done to that was, and this has nothing to do with the outdoors. I don't know. It was one of those videos where I'm like, this is unrelated to all my others. It was like people who only bench press when they go to the gym start a podcast. And so it's just them talking about like chest day, like the whole video. But that's like the closest I've done. So I could do just a podcast in general one. Yeah.
That's funny. Do you have a short list of stereotypes or cities or ideas that you're going to take jabs at here soon?
Yeah, let me show you. I have a notes. So I write all my ideas on a notes app in my phone. It's like very unofficial.
Yeah. Okay, wait. Interjection. Do you ever get nervous that someone's going to go through your notes app? Because I feel like I put all of my thoughts in my notes app, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know what people would think of me if this is just like a scattering of nonsense.
I mean, I think the lock feature on Notes apps was one of the best that they've invented. You can lock your notes. I didn't know that you could do that. And it's like passcode protected.
That's clever.
Yeah, but I don't lock this one. But these are, you can see, like those are all my concepts that I haven't done yet.
Yeah.
And then down below, I can scroll for like an hour.
Huge.
Yeah, like these are all the scripts.
That's a novel.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Oh, so you write out the full script.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then what I'll do is I'll film snippets one at a time, like lines one at a time, and I'll crop them together.
Yeah.
At the end. Yeah.
You mentioned before we hit record here that you're planning on, and we can edit this out if you don't want this to be known, that you're planning on posting like a bloopers video.
Mm-hmm.
How many takes does it usually take you to get like the video correct?
Yeah, so I've started recently, a couple of my videos, I post bloopers at the end. Okay. So from that video specifically. Some of the videos like don't warrant a blooper reel because I'm just like on my own in my room, and I like, if I mess up, I'm just like, shit. I gotta just do that again. It's not like funny, you know. But if I have somebody filming, which is probably like 25% of the time, I'll have a filmer or like people in the background. Then I tend to just be like silly when I mess up, and I'll just be like things happen. Like I filmed a spike ball video once, and there were so many times when I'm like, that's hilarious. We're gonna add that. So bloopers, I do have like a story going, like a story highlight of some of the bloopers, and then some of my recent videos I have like bloopers at the end. But I'm trying to find more ways to incorporate that because it kind of shows the behind the scenes, and a lot of people have said they don't know what I'm actually like in real life. So that kind of gives a little glimpse into that.
That Notes brain dump is impressive. Do you have like an official writing process? Like, are you doing this first thing in the morning? Do you have a room that you go to for this?
Yeah, so I pretty much schedule my day. So coming from teaching, like routine is big for me. So I try and keep a routine in my day. Otherwise, I'll just sit on my bed and scroll TikTok all day.
Yeah.
So I'm like, go to the gym, edit for like an hour, film for an hour, write scripts for an hour. And so I'll basically like have a concept that I'm going to film that day, and then I'll have a concept. I try to get a script for the next day ready to go. Mm-hmm. So I can just film and then write the next one. But sometimes I have writer's block, and sometimes I'll write like no scripts. I'll film a video and I just like lose a day of progress, right? Mm-hmm. But there's some days where I script like 3 to 4 videos, and then I'll just film them all, and I'll be really productive. So it's with anything, like you go through procrastination phases, and things just don't flow as easy.
Is there anything for you that spurs more creativity? Like, does a good night of sleep translate to better videos, or a couple of beers or something?
Coffee shops. I don't even drink coffee. I'll show up and be like, can I get a water?
Yeah.
And I'll sit at the table, and like the couple times I've gone to a coffee shop, I've been like Dr. Seuss. Like I'm just writing the most brilliant things in my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there with my water. I'll get like a food or something. I just like, everyone's like, if you're going to a coffee shop, don't you need to get coffee? And I'm like, no. And I'm just sitting there on my phone. People are thinking I'm just texting.
Yeah.
But I'm like on my Notes app. I feel like most writers are either typing on a laptop or like have a written journal. I'm just like very unofficial with it.
Yeah.
But that seems to be the best setting for me to be creative.
Do you get bothered everywhere you go now? Because
yes, especially here. Like I've been in Colorado, for those listeners, I've been in Colorado for like 4 days, and this is like a primary demographic of my viewers.
Yeah.
And so like, I think over the past 3 days, like 70 to 80 people have like come on.
Damn.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
terrifying.
been a lot. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, as a kid, I was like, I hate being the center of attention.
Yeah.
And I just feel like eyes on me a lot when I'm in certain settings. Like Boston, not as much. But if I go to like Burlington, Vermont or Boulder, right, it's going to happen all the time.
Yeah.
Does any part of it like ruin the trip for you a little bit?
No. It's kind of fun. Like it doesn't happen enough where I'm like, I got to get out of here, right? And if I'm with friends or like at dinner, people are usually really respectful and they like won't come up and say anything. But I find it kind of fun, and I like welcome it when people come up and ask for a photo or something. I'll be like, yeah, let's do it.
How often do people ask you to make a skit up on the spot?
It's never happened, but people will come up and be like, yo, what's up? My name's Splinter. and I don't know how to respond because I'm like, do I go along with it? Or do I keep this rolling?
Yeah.
But usually I'm just like, haha, how are you?
Yeah, that's funny.
Because I'm not like an improv person. It's tough for me to like think on the fly.
Yeah.
I feel like if I walked up to you and I said, hi, my name's Splinter, and you said, haha, how's it going? Like, I would die inside and also want to be very small.
Yeah, it's, I don't think I handle them with grace. I think it's just, I make things awkward when people do that.
Sure.
I apologize.
Well, they probably also make it awkward by doing it.
I've got to give you props because the niche that you found with these videos lends itself perfectly to the sponsored content that you do. Like, Chance has learned this, that social media can be a tricky space to do sponsored content because people see you as a sellout, but you found a way to work with brands and still stay on your own brand about keeping these things funny. Has that been do you have to put more energy into working with a brand to ensure that you're not compromising on the type of content that you want to make?
Yeah, so I kind of let them know outright. If I get like pitched by a brand, I'll be like, would love to work with you. Like, I think we can make this work. And that's if I think it'll make it work. Mm-hmm. Like, there's certain products or brands that like just doesn't align. And I don't think I can. And I'll be honest with that. But if I can make it work, I'll be like, I usually have this style of content, and I think that performs really well, and I think it can be beneficial to both of us.
Yeah.
And usually they're on board with it.
Yeah.
And they're like, send us a script and a concept, and I'll email it to them, and they're like, sick, let's do it.
Sweet.
So their brands are usually pretty open to it. There are other times I have done a couple that are a little more like, I don't know, scripted and like salesy, which I hate doing.
Right.
So I try and avoid that. So I like to kind of incorporate my style of content with their brand, and it does really well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because the theme of your videos is you're usually poking fun at the subject.
Exactly.
So like it must be tough to make a video where you're not making fun of the sponsor.
Yeah, like I've had a couple brands, and I won't name them, that are like we love your work, but we don't really want to like make a self-deprecating post, you know, which totally fair. Like that's their.
In that case, why are they messaging you? You know?
Yeah.
I think it'd be funny if you did one. I'm sure you probably get flooded with them too, where it's like every other email is a different CBD company, like trying to get you to test their CBD shit.
So many.
If you
CBD
were to
companies.
do one that like you just say yes to all of them, but like it's just like a bunch of quick takes, and you just keep changing the name of the product you're toting.
This is gonna be a collaborative ad. Like, I hope you're okay with 16 different CBD companies on one video.
Or like you just don't expect to get paid by them, and you just do it to fuck with them back.
That would be hilarious. Yeah.
It's funny because I listen to a handful of comedy podcasts, and like most of the time when they're reading ads, they're just making fun of the company, like legitimately, like who the fuck wrote this script, like that sort of thing. So I question sometimes how close of attention they're actually paying, but it sounds like you're working directly with the brand. So
yeah, there are a few agencies that I work through that are on behalf of the brands, but those take a little bit longer. But a lot of times it's through a representative brand directly.
Sweet. Well, I think that exhausts my list of questions. Do you have anything else?
Nah.
Sweet. Well, Matt, this has been a ton of fun. Thanks for coming on the podcast, sharing more of your story. Looking forward to the podcast next year, or the documentary. I'll get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a blast. Thank you for having me, and we'll do this again maybe tomorrow.
Yeah,
sure.
Sounds good. Wait, can you sign off with one of your names?
Yes. So Backpacker Radio, thank you so much. My name's Schmutz. Thanks for having me.
To the Trek propaganda portion of today's show. Love this one specifically because this is a featured styled post that came out of nowhere from a blogger. We get these every now and again. Shout out to Isabel Coran. And the title of this one is How Fast is Too Fast? 6 Lessons from a Sub 80 Day Through Hike. This is in reference to her AT Sobo through hike. Again, as always, I want you guys to go check out the article, so I'm not going to spill all the beans, but a couple of the lessons here. Number 1 is you will spend most of your time walking. That is congruent with my experience going southbound on the PCT. I went basically as fast as I could. It was my own personal FKT, not even as fast as Isabel here. But yeah, it was a lot of walking. And number 2 is you can cherry pick your hiking season because you're out there for less time. You don't have to endure all 3 seasons. So if you guys want even more lessons from a sub 80 day Sobo AT through hike, head on over to the show notes and check out Isabel's excellent post. Question of the day. Chance, this is yours.
Yes. I had to write something down before I forgot it. Ironically, what I wrote down was my inability to remember anything. You got to get that down.
Yeah.
This one, so usually backstory, when I give a question of the day prompt. Like, we started telling Rachel to include the context of when I prompted it, because I will forget why I said it and then just go into it completely blank slate. So this one I don't remember what prompted the thought, but I tried to find some context, and I sent it at 8:40 a.m. on a Monday, which means this is how I started my work week, was thinking about this. And that to me makes even less sense.
You're usually very
2 a.m.y
standoffish on a Monday morning.
Yeah,
we all have our flow through the weekday vibes, and Chauncey on a Monday morning is usually like your
not answering.
Yeah, Chauncey's in her cave.
But not this time. This time I said, question of the day, why aren't there wild chickens?
I said I was going to go last because...
Okay. Matt?
Why aren't there wild chickens? I feel like they're really noisy, first of all, and that would just draw predators. And also, aren't there wild chickens or no?
We haven't actually researched this, so
have you heard like the grouse, right?
But that's a grouse. That's like of the quail family, I would say.
Okay. I had written down grouse just because they get on my nerves because every time I walk up to them, they explode out of the shrubs, and I nearly have a heart attack.
I'll Google, is a grouse a chicken for you?
You're not a thru hiker until you shit your pants. You're not a thru hiker until you've almost had a heart attack
from
because
a grouse
flies out
unbelievably often.
Yeah.
A grouse is a group of birds from the order Galliformes.
Gallifenacus.
It doesn't seem... Is a grouse a chicken? A chunky chicken-like bird of northern forests.
We'll take it.
Yeah, that counts. Chunky chicken-like bird.
Like your standard chicken.
Yeah.
Okay, big issue in the southeast, wild hogs, right? Like, pigs got out, mated. Yeah. Like, now we've got feral hogs that are freaking terrifying. But, like, a chicken gets out, we don't have a problem.
No, you have a meal.
Yeah. So why?
Yeah. Do you have a hypothesis before I give my anecdote?
I sent this as a question.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think Matt's actually right, because they're at the bottom of the food chain, so they go out anywhere and they're immediately gobbled up. Yeah, like anyone that has chickens has to like put a Jurassic Park level style security system to stop raccoons, coyotes, snakes, foxes, basically anything will come and eat a chicken. And which brings me to the place where I've seen a wild chicken, which is in Hawaii. They don't have predators. It's all birds.
Yeah.
Like a bird is the highest up the evolutionary chain there.
Is that why there's a chicken in Moana?
What's Hey?
Yeah.
I have a Hey
serves up too. Chicken Joe.
Yeah.
Oh.
It might be. Yeah, but I don't know if they're wild, but they're not in like fenced-in areas. Like I've been to the beach where like chickens are just strolling by.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't last like
10
minutes out here.
No,
I feel like.
definitely not. Yeah. Every friend that I have that has chickens loses chickens to something getting into their pen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I also love this because usually if we ask something dumb like this, someone who like has a chicken doctorate will email us as like scientific answer. I hope we get that.
I didn't look this up, so I could be very wrong.
Chicken
about
experts.
This. Yeah,
here we go.
They exist, I swear.
Yeah. So today's Triple Crown is kind of a hybrid of two segments. We used to do Stupid Thing of the Week, and this Triple Crown is basically the Triple Crown of Stupid Things of the Week with a different title. This is the Triple Crown of things that have made you question your own IQ. This is a Chance original, of course.
Yeah. Do you know when you have a thought and like nothing prompts the thought, you just like maybe are having a moment of peace in your mental life and you think of something like awful or cringy or just like dumb you've done in the past and like then spend the next hour cringing over yourself.
Yeah.
This was why I sent that, because I was driving and I had a thought of a time I did a thing and I was like, how fucking dumb am I?
I do so many dumb things that it happens so often that nothing stands out. That was the challenge here. And I was blessed by the fact that one of these happened today, specifically for this segment.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I'll start with the one that prompted the thought. One time, a lot of these are going to be throwbacks, but one time when I was living in Denver, like initially, this is before DJIs, before like a lot of like camera stuff became affordable and like everyone was using GoPros. Like GoPros were the thing. And I was about to go do something. Don't know what, but I really, really wanted a GoPro for it. And I was Googling, I was passing through Denver for some reason. I think I was going to the summer camp and I wanted a new GoPro. And I was driving out to California and maybe I stopped in Denver for the weekend. Like, I don't remember the specifics, but I look up GoPro stores, and there was one store, and it was at the airport. And so I was like, all right, sick. I'll go to that store. And so I drove to the airport, parked in airport parking, went into the airport, and like all you get before security is like that one coffee shop. And so I'm at the coffee shop, and I'm like, how do I get to the GoPro store? And they're like, it's in the terminal. And I'm like, okay, so how do I get to it? And they're like, you have to go through security. And I'm like, well, I'm not actually flying. I just need to go to the GoPro store. And it, like, some poor man at a coffee shop had to explain to me that I was not getting a GoPro that day unless I bought a plane ticket.
I was going to say, now I got a plane ticket.
Yeah, so I left empty-handed. And at some point on the drive back to, like, wherever I was going to go hang my head, like, I had this, like, thought that was like, how didn't you fucking know that?
Yeah.
You know?
It's also cruel to have a store in an airport.
I mean, they have all kinds of stores in airports.
But I mean, and not one. There are other GoPro stores.
Yeah, well, there's stores that sell GoPros now.
Yeah.
But it was when it was like the Hero 3 was like the huge, you know.
Yeah.
They were still pretty niche.
Did you think about talking to someone in the security line, giving them the money?
Ooh.
And hoping that they would buy you a GoPro and bring it back out?
No. I always am worried they're going to think that I'm like trying to bring in a bomb.
No, it's a terrifying thing. The TSA is nothing you want to like mess around with, but that's just a thought I had.
Yeah. Bribing the TSA didn't cross my mind. Maybe it should have.
I mean, you weren't a flying passenger. What could they give you?
But I could have also taken my bribe money and put it towards a flight.
Yeah.
And then skip the flight,
or just go to Hawaii.
But that one made me feel quite dumb.
Yeah, fair.
That is fair.
Okay, Schmutz, you're up.
All right. Let's see. Okay, so this, giving a little context, I used to work in New Hampshire, right? We were talking about that. And a lot of times when you're driving, say we're going to like one of the towns near the camp, you drive on the road and you see those like stands that are selling firewood, or like wood to burn for like a campfire, right? And it always says like camp firewood, right? I, for many years, way more years than I should have, thought that these camps, because I didn't see the actual firewood, I just saw the sign that said camp firewood. I thought there were a bunch of summer camps that were called camp firewood. And I'm like, there has to be like the market is saturated for these summer camps. Why are there so many of these camps that go by the same name within like a 5-mile radius? Like, this is, how many kids could there possibly be out there that could go to these camps?
That's
funny. I like that one.
That's perfect. That's good. You were able to pull that up on the spot.
When did you realize you were wrong?
I was driving, and there was one time where it was like a fully stocked firewood like stand, and I was looking at it, and I like kind of tilted my head a little bit to get a better look, and I was like, that's wood that you would burn in a fire. And I didn't want to bring it up to the people I was in the car with, because they would have thought I had a low IQ, right? And so I just had this like epiphany that like, yes, this is what it's for. It's to like actually burn wood, and no, there aren't kids that attend these places.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
My first one, two of mine are not like specific incidents. You guys' examples have been better so far, but just generally speaking, this is something I grapple with all the time. I've since let my guard down about it, but just caring about sports in general. It's a stupid thing. It's a very stupid. I'm like passionately invested in a group of strangers wearing a series of colors who get paid millions of dollars, who definitely don't give a fuck about me. And like, I'm sitting there yesterday watching the Bears game, like screaming when Justin Fields is running in for a touchdown. Like, intellectually, a very dumb thing to engage in.
I think I scared Garrett yesterday with the Bills game. Because did you watch it?
I missed the end of it. I saw all the controversy.
Yeah.
Mahomes was fired up.
Yeah.
Worst fucking call ever.
He was wrong, though.
He was definitely wrong.
The guy was offsides.
Plus, if there's ever a team that gets every favorable call of all time, it's...
Well, I learned on the Bills' social media today that apparently he wasn't talking about his guy. He was talking about Von Miller in like the next play. I don't know if that's true or false, but either way, he didn't look good for himself.
Yeah. Well, he brought it up in the press conference. Yeah. He's like, I don't know, they never call that, but like, it's a rule,
right?
You know, like, you got to call the rules, even if like they miss a call in the past. They're not gonna like not call it because it has to do with how the game's going to end.
Well, we also just lost a game for having an extra guy on the field, you know, like
yeah.
We know the pain.
Yeah. The coach at that time was questioning his IQ.
Yeah.
That actually happened. We don't have to turn this into a sports podcast, but yeah, I know what you're referencing. But yeah, I get emotionally invested into something. Like my mood is down, especially if you lose a big game. I was in an emotional state that I was not proud of the entire Cubs World Series. I flew out to Chicago just to be in the area. I never had any intention of going to the game because the tickets were so expensive. I just wanted to be at bars.
Breathe the same air.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same.
And and they went down 3-0, and I ended up changing my flight to come back home sooner. And I have my best friend talk me out of taking that earlier flight. I ended up sticking it out. You know how that played out. And because Cubs ended up winning the World Series. But just a stupid thing overall. Like, why do I care about these guys?
Like college basketball. I'm a huge UConn basketball fan. And I'm like, these guys are like 8 years younger than me.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're in college. Like, why do I care so much about the outcome of their season?
Yeah.
I'm like, I will be like depressed if they lose.
Yeah.
Like, very upset. So.
But the older I get, the less I give myself a hard time about it. I think it's good to have dumb hobbies.
Probably the more you care, too.
Yeah.
No, I was definitely peak stupid in like my late teens, early 20s, but I don't judge myself anymore.
Okay.
Just a little bit, I guess. My second one is something that happened today. I was literally racking my brain trying to come up with examples for this segment, and then I reached into the oven and promptly burnt myself. It gets stupider because I have a matching scar on my other hand from doing the exact same thing a week before. Legitimately, in back-to-back weeks, I've burnt my thumb twice in the same exact spot twice.
Yeah.
So, I'm a guy who can't operate an oven without getting a scar.
Hey. Yeah, it's me with pizza burning the roof of my mouth.
Sure.
Like every time.
Been there many. Everything microwaved is just going to scorch my mouth.
The Tostinos will do that.
Yeah.
You think they're good and then you bite.
Yeah.
They're not good.
So snake draft rules mean you get to go again.
Perfect. Another one is a lack of reading. So I don't like reading. Period. I have read books in the past. The peak of my reading career was 8th grade, and it's because I found a really cool series about vampires, and I thought that was sick.
Twilight.
But now I find myself like cringing at the idea of sitting down and just looking at words on a page. I don't know if that makes me have a low IQ. It definitely translates to a lower IQ, but it's just something that I can't like pay attention for more than a certain amount of time to. A lot of people say like, I listen to podcasts or audiobooks in the car. I just listen to music. So if that makes me a dumber person, I'll take it, you know. But,
for your notepad of ideas, you should do one on the person who bases their personality on the fact that they like to read a lot.
You basically just be roasting Chance.
Yeah, you just be I can help you with this. I can tell you everything I'm self-conscious about.
Right now. Yeah.
There's probably a lot of people listening to this who are familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk. Does that name ring any bells?
No.
He's a very popular marketer, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
But he's written, I think, 4 or 5 best-selling books, and his quote is that he's written more books than he's read.
I went to the Boulder bookstore yesterday, which is massive, by the way.
Yeah.
And I was with a friend who's like really into reading, and I was impressed by like all of the books that he knew. And I was there pointing out, I was like spending more time in the children's section because that's what I recognized the most. It was like that and like the maps section. Meanwhile, he's in like historical fiction, like all these really cool topics that I'm like, I wish I knew one thing about that.
Dude, they got the newest Waldo here.
Yeah. Guinness World Records 2023. Let's go.
How long are their fingernails? You know, the ones where they just like...
Yes, I saw it yesterday.
No shit.
Yeah.
Damn,
I almost bought it. Yeah.
Does it still have the like holographic
Yeah,
cover?
it's the sickest looking book ever. My mom had to like cut me off when I was younger. Every year she would like buy it for me for Christmas, and one year she's like, Matt, you have a problem. Like the records, there are only a few new ones each year. Like, just look it up.
What if you had to break one Guinness record, which one would you go for?
Probably the longest time, or the most consecutive days using a bidet. I feel like that'd be really cool.
Are you a regular bidet user?
I wouldn't say regular. I don't actually own one, but every time I use it, I'm like, this is the height of luxury.
Yeah, I've never used one before.
I used one drunk. My boyfriend got one for the toilet, and I thought that was very strange. And I refused to use it because I think it's very strange. And like he has to mentally talk me into the idea that it's not shooting toilet water at you, it's shooting clean water at you. But one time I was drunk and he convinced me to try it, and so he was controlling the buttons and I was just sitting there waiting.
Yeah.
So
no, it sounds like foreplay.
There was no excitement in me afterwards. It was like you spray a cat with a water bottle, like that kind of.
It really catches you off guard sometimes.
Yeah. I wasn't ready.
It's funny that you say it doesn't make sense because like without the background of just growing up wiping with toilet paper all the time, it makes way more sense.
No, I mean like the water is shooting at you from in the toilet where you just like did things.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem clean.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
You know,
it's not. Yeah.
If it was recycled toilet water, that would be true.
If it was coming straight from like a Brita, I would feel better. But
I bet you there are people who like do their plumbing so it is the toilet water just to like not waste.
Sure.
It's the same people who would like drink the brown water out of their dish when they're
or
hiking,
like would have the basket of washcloths behind the toilet and then like the second basket for the dirty washcloths and then the sign that says like don't flush the toilet paper.
You should look up what the Guinness record of the most instant oatmeal consumed in 1 year is because you might be close.
I beat it. Yeah.
That's a good one to go for. They might have to add it.
I think I like single-handedly boosted Quaker's like revenue that year. Yeah.
Have you reached out to them to advertise?
Not yet.
That'd be a good one.
This is your sign, Quaker. I'm coming for you.
You could be the new Quaker Oats man.
Start upping your quantities of maple and brown sugar because it's game over.
You're from New England.
Yeah.
You could be the new. You could be the new Quaker.
The Quaker. People wouldn't buy it if my face was on that. Are you kidding me?
That's something to Photoshop for sure. It's like an oat on your chin. Okay. Wow, what to choose? This one was really humbling, and it was in high school, which makes it better because it was far enough removed, but makes it worse because I was educated through to high school. I don't know how this came up. I know where I was. I was in my best friend's room across the street from my house. We were in her bedroom talking about something, and the United Kingdom came up. And I said, I've always wanted to visit that zoo. And she was confused, rightly so. And apparently, up until that point of my life, like, and this is like an internal thought that made its way out in the comfort of friendship. But I had like always thought like the animal kingdom. And so the United Kingdom sounds like the animal kingdom. And so I had just thought that the United Kingdom was a really big zoo in Europe. And
or
that,
Florida.
Yeah, that one, when she explained that was incorrect to me, was very humbling.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
That was a hard one.
That's a deep hole to dig out of. Yeah, jeez.
Yeah. And what's even worse is I've got so many to choose from for the final one, and they're all kind of at this level, which tells you something about my IQ.
Chance. Your IQ is right where it needs to be. It's
fine.
Don't go down.
It's where it is what it is. So this we had bought a pickup truck. This was in like the early 2010s. And we were road tripping around the country, living out of it, like doing all this shit, like making big miles, like expecting we could get from one place to another in a like manual pickup truck that doesn't go above 55, because we didn't realize that the D on the gear shifter was 5th gear. We just thought it had 4 gears. So we always capped ourselves at 55 miles, not realizing we had a bigger gear. That's not the moment. That one I kind of cut myself slack for. I learned how to drive manual in that truck. How could I have known? This is like a 17-hour drive we were trying to make to get to like some park the next day. And it was my turn driving. And every time we needed gas, I was getting like 3 giant like super slurps of root beer and just like putting them in every cup holder and just chugging them. Like I was on the night shift. I was like 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. and I'm chugging these fucking root beers. And we stop for gas somewhere. The other people are sleeping in the back. And they wake up to me just like barfing, like puking everywhere. I couldn't take any more root beer. And I finish and I'm like wiping. I'm like, I gotta go get more root beer. And they're like, why? And I was like, it's the late shift. Like I need caffeine. I gotta go. Like I gotta be able to keep myself up and wired and da-da-da. And they were like, root beer doesn't have caffeine. Like, that's one of the, like, selling points of this soda is it is a no caffeine soda. Wouldn't fucking believe it. They had to bring me a can and, like, show me on the no caffeine.
Yeah.
And up until that point, I had no idea. I thought for that entire road trip, I was fueling myself. I was riding on placebos. I was driving through the night, like, thinking I was cracked out. And I was actually just not.
Maybe that makes you brilliant though, because if you're utilizing the placebo effect and you're not actually like
I was convinced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
did you feel tired
after I knew?
Okay,
because it ruined the illusion.
Just fall asleep immediately.
But until then, I thought I was running high. Yeah.
If they just kept the thing going, you would have been wide awake.
I would have been buzzing.
Jeez.
So yeah, that was kind of dumb.
But you hear the stories of like high school kids giving them. I don't know if this is like a known study or something.
Giving high school kids?
No, it was like they put out a keg of O'Doul's and like they were all acting like they were shit can wasted.
Yeah. There's been a show about this where they give like half the people O'Doul's and half the others like actual beer.
Yeah, a placebo is very strong.
It's very fun.
Yeah, it works.
Cool.
Jeez. All right, my third. Yeah, it's my turn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my third. As a teacher, kids ask a lot of questions, right? And so. Like from a student perspective, I feel like a teacher is a symbol of knowledge, right? Like you ask them something about any content and they'll know that, right? Or be able to direct you to, like, they'll either divert the question to like make it seem like they know the answer, right? Which is something I did quite a bit because there were certain things I just didn't know. And I was like, oh, you should like look it up and bring it to share with the class, right? Like something like a learning topic. And so as a teacher, I feel like I should be an expert in long division. Like a lot of kids are experts in long division who are learning it that year. And 7th and 8th grade, that's not something we do. It's like a 5th grade thing, right? And so if you put a division problem in front of me that requires more than like a simple like thought, right? I will not be able to comprehend that division problem. I will stare at the paper for hours wondering like what to do next, and then you have like a 5th grader come up and be like, come on, are you shitting me, Mr. Lyons? Like, this is long division, like we learned this in 5th grade. And they look at me like I have like no knowledge whatsoever. So as a teacher, I subbed for a little while, and there was like 5th grade math where we're learning all these things, and they have different methods of learning than I used to have. And so I'm sitting there like dumbfounded at how these kids are able to compute these problems, and I have no clue how to do it. And I claim I'm an 8th grade teacher. So
I've seen that they changed multiplication. Like they changed math. Like the whole system for doing it is different.
They're like, you like carry the 1, go outside, do like hopscotch for 20 minutes, come back in, and it's solved. Like it's like the method in which they solve certain things now is crazy.
It seems like they've added additional steps.
Yeah.
So maybe we're the smart ones.
We are.
We're just short circuiting the whole process.
Yeah.
I'm stuck between 2 here.
We'll do honorable mentions because I've got a lot to get off my chest.
Okay. Again, this is not a specific story, just something that I do on an ongoing basis that does not make my wife very proud. I have a tendency to oftentimes leave my fly down. Sometimes when I'm done peeing, I just forget that last step. And there are a lot of circumstances where I'm walking into a room with just my fly just wide open. And you wouldn't associate with that with somebody who's like a Nobel laureate or something like that. Like that's a dumb guy. So yeah, that's mine.
That's how I knew when I first met you that you were a dumb guy.
Yeah, I probably did have my fly down.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't looking there. Okay, honorable mentions.
This happens to me too often. Again, but walking into a room and immediately forgetting why I'm there.
Yeah.
Like I go in to accomplish a task. It's now to the point where like I'll have to give myself a mantra as I'm walking to a place so I don't get distracted by something else. Be like, getting the tape. I'm getting the tape. I'm getting the tape. That's the only way that I can remember something.
Sometimes I get aggressive when someone tries to talk to me and I'm holding the thoughts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, I'm doing something here.
I'm trying to think. Mine are more specific. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, so I won't go in depth, but the one time I was in Potsdam, New York, which is just south of Canada, and I, like, sometimes when you're just going a short drive in your car, you don't bring your wallet. You know, like, you should, but you're like, what are the odds I'm going to get pulled over today? I wanted to pet puppies, so I looked up pet stores on my GPS, and I didn't realize ON stood for Ontario, and I ended up in Canada because they had a sign taped to the Border Patrol window that just said, on lunch, come in. Which I still think, like, it sounds like I'm faking that story. I couldn't have ended up in Canada if I made that up. And I had to get back into the U.S. and, like, convince U.S. Border Patrol that I was not only an American, but, like, really did just want to pet puppies. That one wasn't my brightest or my best.
They let you in?
Yeah, they quizzed me on my whole life. I didn't know they knew that much about me.
That's tough.
I accidentally drove into Mexico one time. That was a bad mistake because it took like 2 hours to get back in.
Yeah.
It's not a small mistake.
Yeah, so it happens. It wasn't the end of the world. I got back, but that was dumb. One time when I had my Jeep Wrangler, I tried to drive from Zion to Moab on dirt roads because I thought I was like an off-roader.
From Zion to where?
Moab. Stop it. It's a far drive. It's like you're diagonaling the state of Utah on just dirt roads. I didn't have any extra gas tanks or anything. I got up this one fucking gnarly climb. It was pitch black outside because I didn't plan my time wisely, and my hot oil light came on. I didn't know there was a hot oil light in a car, and I did not know what to do. I had to turn around and go back, but I had to also wait until the car cooled down because I don't know what happens when your oil is hot.
Yeah.
But I was not in cell reception. I had no like spot device. It was dark.
That's scary.
And so that didn't end up being the best idea. One time I had a friend who tried to tell us that the X-Men house, like in the X-Men movie, the school, in the movie, it's a house in Westchester, New York. And so he told us that he had been to that house. It's actually filmed in Canada. We drove to the address like an hour and a half, believing him. And we got there and we knocked on the door and it was just someone's house. Was not the house from the movie.
Couldn't it have been someone's house even if it was the correct house?
Yeah, but like we were looking for the mansion, the X-Men mansion.
Yeah,
it was not there.
Okay.
And then not being able to find the blazes on the Ozark Highlands Trail. There's like 5 to 10 minutes of video of me just cursing.
Yeah.
And like backtracking and like literally saying out loud, there's no way I could be this dumb.
Yeah.
So those are my honorable mentions.
Good.
Right.
Well done.
Thanks.
Mailbag.
Hi, guys. Here in Arkansas, we have an Arkansas Outdoor magazine that sends me emails. They had an article about the bipartisan Explore Act introduced in the U.S. House of Representatives. They linked the legislative hearing. It's very interesting. I'm no legal guru, just a woman who enjoys backpacking in Arkansas. But I think the hearing is worth a listen, specifically the discussion about updates to the antiquated permit system in our parks in order to allow more access and what that could mean for a long-distance hiker. Love you guys. Mean it. Tori.
Probably should have prepared for this one and actually paid attention to the legislative hearing.
I would love for someone to go back to the Triple Crown. I'd love for someone to give me the Cliff Notes.
Yeah. You could probably just put it in Bard or something like that. That's what AI is good for. Yeah. But thank you, Tori. We'll check it out.
Anyone who's interested in that.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll have somebody listen to this who's an expert in this. We'll have a qualified opinion. So we'll just wait for you to tell us what it means. Yeah. 5-star review. We don't actually have one for today, so we should give some sort of incentive for people to leave reviews on the podcast.
Stickers?
Sure. If you are a consumer of this podcast and you want your review read, we will do... How do we do this in the past?
Oh, what if we do this? Because we're doing our book bundle and probably putting a bow on it as this comes out.
Yep.
If you leave us a 5-star review in January, we'll pick someone and we'll send them a book bundle.
Love it.
Springing this on you.
Should we go crazy and just say we'll do stickers for every review?
In January?
Just not 1, 2, or 3.
Or
1, 2, 3, 4 stars.
Yeah.
We'll do stickers for everyone that leaves reviews in February.
February?
Yeah, because this is coming out the end of January.
Okay, we'll so they're going to have to remember and then wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll round up to include January as well.
What if we do like a 1-month window from this episode?
Okay. That's good. Screenshot your review, send it to us.
Podcast@thetrek.co.
Yeah, I know that stinks for everyone who submitted a review. If you've submitted a review in the past, we'll pick 10 people to give stickers to as well, so they're not left out to dry.
Send us a screenshot of your review at podcast@thetrek.co, and if it's like a bleak amount of things that we get, maybe we'll just give you them.
Yeah, but we'll make it rain stickers.
But we're hoping to just get flooded with these screenshots.
Yeah, that was very well thought out as well.
Thank you.
Thank you to our Chuck Norris Award winners on Patreon. That is Alex and Misty with Navigators Crafting, Andrew, Austin McDaniel, Austin Ford, Brad and Blair from 13 Adventures, Brent Stenberg, Brian Alsop,
Fables,
Christopher Marshburn, Coach from Marion Outdoors, Dane,
Ish,
Derek Cook, Eric Casper,
The Friendly Ghost,
Eric Hoffman, Greg Knight, Greg McDaniel.
May he bring honor to his name.
Iron Hike Endurance Productions, Liz Seeger, Matt Sukup, Mike Poisel, Patrick Ciencialo, Sawyer Products, Spam, Timothy Hahn,
Solo,
and Tracy Trigger. You can follow us on social at Backpacker Radio on Instagram and TikTok, at Backpacker Pod on Twitter, Facebook.com/Backpacker. Oh, I said Twitter. X is what I meant to say. Facebook.com/Backpacker Radio. You can follow Schmutz.
Yes, at Matt's Lyon. MATTSLYON.
You probably follow him already, but just in case.
Is there not an S at the end of it?
No, so that wasn't available. My name's Matt Lyons. Everyone always says my last name's either Lyon or Slyon just because of my username, but it's Matt Lyons. Yeah.
Got it.
Do you hate the person that has it?
Yeah, I messaged him once. I was like, hey, you want a high five for your username? He didn't respond.
You can follow Chauncey.
Oh, I'm at Instagram. No, I'm on Instagram at Juliana_Chauncey, and you can get Hiking from Home, a long distance hiking guide for family and friends in a bundle, in a bundy with one of Zach's.
Appalachian Trials and Pacific Crest Trials are my books. And yeah, we'll be wrapping the book bundle. We'll just say, what did we say before? January 15th. We'll extend it through the month of January.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Brain.
We only have so many books. You got a shit ton of books, though. I've got 2 more of those boxes in my car.
Yeah, I don't want to order more for a while. It's not a fun task.
I keep making the mistake of ordering like 12 books at a time. And then I go and then
then the price is up, too.
Oh, yeah.
Don't they charge you more if you order less?
Yeah, but I feel like with shipping, it all ends up being about the same.
I don't know. It's girl math.
What service do you use?
Ingram Spark. I don't really recommend it.
Oh.
They have a phone line that tells you they don't have a phone line.
Yeah.
So
I used something that no longer exists. I got gobbled up by Amazon, so I ordered my books.
I also paid for them to make it into an ebook, and the ebook looks like trash. And every time I submit edits, they tell me some hoops I have to go through for them to do it, and then they've been selling them for 12 cents. So if you want to get my ebook, it's on the internet somewhere for 12 cents. Yeah. I don't know how to stop it. I've never actually approved it, but good for you if you could find it for 12 cents.
I wish I could remember the name because there's a really good Mac application for editing ebooks. We used it for How to Afford a Thru Hike. And
Adobe InDesign?
No. It was something for people without any sort of technical competence whatsoever. But yeah, it works nicely. And last but not least, subscribe and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume podcasts. Follow us on YouTube. The subscribes have been way up for sure.
Hello, Internet.
You can watch Matt regale us with awesome tales from the PCT and being a social media celebrity. And that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening, and happy hiking.
Bye.